Homeless girl asked for a ride. The driver couldn't believe how she repaid him. The fog curled like ghostly fingers across the wet highway as the red semi-truck rumbled down the deserted road. Peter Carter squinted through the windshield, the wipers beating a steady rhythm against the drizzle. He had been driving for hours. Another long haul, another night of stale coffee, and the lonely hum of tires on asphalt. But then something unusual made him ease off the gas. A figure stood by the roadside, barely visible through the mist. Peter leaned forward, heart instinctively tightening. It was a girl, young, maybe early 20s, wearing a tattered white wedding dress. Her bare feet sunk into the soggy grass. Her arms were wrapped around herself for warmth, and her long black hair hung in damp, tangled strands across her face. Mud streaked the once pristine gown, and small cuts lined her legs and arms. She looked like she had stepped straight out of a nightmare. Peter's first instinct was caution. You hear stories, setups, tricks worse. But something about the girl's posture, the way she shivered uncontrollably, head bowed low, like she had no more tears left. It pulled at something deep inside him. He pulled over his tires, skidding slightly on the wet shoulder. The girl didn't move, didn't wave, didn't even look up. Peter climbed down from his rig and approached slowly, palms open. "Hey, you okay, miss?" He called out gently, careful not to scare her. She flinched at his voice, a small whimper escaping her chapped lips, but didn't run. Up close, Peter could see her cheeks were hollow from hunger, her lips blue from the cold. There was a bruised flower still tangled in her matted hair, like a sad memory of a day that had gone terribly wrong. "Do you need help?" Peter tried again, voice softer. She finally looked up. Her eyes were wide and broken, the kind of look you only saw in people who had been through hell and weren't sure they made it back. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She just nodded slowly, almost in shame. Peter shrugged off his heavy flannel Peterette and draped it over her trembling shoulders. She clutched it tightly like a lifeline. "You can ride with me," he said. "Let's get you somewhere warm." He helped her into the truck's cab, bundling her in blankets he kept behind the seat. She curled into a ball against the door, silent, exhausted. Peter turned up the heater full blast and passed her a bottle of water and a packet of crackers. She devoured them like someone who hadn't eaten properly in days. For a few miles they drove in silence, the rain tapping steadily against the windshield. Peter didn't push her for answers. He had seen enough in life to know that sometimes silence carried more weight than words. It wasn't until they passed a small gas station that she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name's Mary," she said, each syllable brittle. Peter glanced at her, surprise. "I'm Peter," he replied warmly. "Nice to meet you, Mary." She tried to smile, but it collapsed into a shudder. Peter decided to ask the gentlest question he could. You running from something?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but didn't fall. She nodded. "My wedding," she rasped. "Today." Peter tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his gut twisted. Mary stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass. He left me at the altar," she said hoarsely. "Told everyone I wasn't good enough, that marrying me was a mistake." Peter shook his head, anger flaring in his chest on her behalf. "But that wasn't the worst," Mary continued, voice cracking. "He and his friends, they laughed. They made bets on how long I'd last before begging to come back." Peter felt a sick knot form in his stomach. He had no words, no comfort strong enough for betrayal that deep. "I ran," Mary said simply. "Ran right out of that church through the fields down the road. Didn't stop until I couldn't feel my feet anymore." Peter blinked hard against the sudden sting behind his eyes. This world, it could be so brutal sometimes. "You didn't deserve that," he said firmly. She shrugged under the blanket. "Maybe I did. Maybe I'm just broken." Peter pulled the rig into a small rest stop. A diner sat glowing in the distance, offering cheap coffee and hot meals. He killed the engine and turned toward her. "Listen to me, Mary," he said, his voice low but strong. "The way they treated you, that says nothing about you. That's on them. Cowards hurt people because they're scared of their own emptiness." She stared at him, a flicker of something. Hope, disbelief crossing her face. "You're not broken," Peter added. "You're bruised. There's a difference." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, the rain slowed to a fine mist, the morning struggling to break through the heavy clouds. Peter cracked a small smile. Now how about we get you some pancakes and hot chocolate, my treat? A tear finally slid down Mary's cheek, but this time it wasn't just sorrow. It was the beginning of thawing. She nodded. Peter helped her down from the truck. She wobbled slightly barefoot in that torn wedding dress, still clutching his oversized Peterette around her thin frame. But there was a new strength in the way she held herself upright. Inside the diner, heads turned. How could they not a trucker and a barefoot girl in a filthy bridal gown? It wasn't exactly something you saw every day. Peter ignored the stares. He guided her to a booth by the window and ordered 2 big breakfasts, extra syrup. Mary hesitated when the plate arrived, as if she wasn't sure she was allowed to sit there to eat to exist in a place warm and safe. Peter picked up his fork and started eating like it was the most normal thing in the world. Slowly, carefully, Mary followed, and with every bite, with every stolen glance around the cozy diner, something invisible but heavy seemed to lift off her shoulders. Peter didn't ask more questions. He just let her exist. For the first time in who knew how long, Mary wasn't running, wasn't proving anything, wasn't apologizing for breathing. She was just there, alive, safe, and somehow that was enough for now. The diner's soft buzz wrapped around them like a blanket. Forks clinked gently against plates, the scent of fresh coffee and maple syrup filling the air. Outside, the rain had faded into a soft mist, but Mary still clung to Peter's Peterette like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. Peter finished his pancakes and leaned back with a satisfied sigh. He wasn't in a rush. Let the miles wait. Tonight was about something more important. You got somewhere to go? He asked carefully. Mary wiped her mouth with a napkin, eyes dropping to the cracked linoleum tabletop. She shook her head. No, family. Another small shake. Peter exhaled slowly. He wasn't a man who made promises easily. Life had taught him that most promises were cheap, but something about the broken girl across from him made him push past every learned caution. You do now, he said quietly. Her head snapped up, disbelief written all over her dirt-smeared face. I'm just a truck driver. Peter continued, shrugging like it was nothing. But I know good people when I see them. You don't have to figure everything out tonight. Just don't give up yet. All right. For the first time, Mary smiled. Not a full smile, more like the ghost of one. But it was there, fragile, precious. Peter didn't push her to talk more. He let her finish her meal at her own pace. He even slipped a 20 to the waitress for extra blankets and socks he knew he had stashed in the back of his cab. That night, Mary slept curled up on the sleeper bed behind Peter's seat, wrapped in warm layers, her breathing finally deep and even. Peter leaned his forehead against the cool glass window and whispered a small prayer he hadn't said since he was a boy. Please give her a second chance. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Peter made calls to old friends, the ones who owed him favors, the ones who still remembered how he pulled them through rough spots. A mechanic in Amarillo, a pastor's wife in Kansas City, a diner owner in Tulsa. Together, quietly, they stitched a net beneath Mary. First a place to stay, then clean clothes, then a job. Nothing fancy, just washing dishes at the diner. But she showed up every morning, sleeves rolled up, head high. Every night, Peter would stop by the diner after his haul and slide into a booth while she wiped tables. You're tougher than most men I know, he'd joke, and Mary would shake her head, laughing softly. You're the first person who didn't look at me like trash, she'd say. She worked hard. She didn't complain. She took night classes for her GED. She volunteered at the shelter on Sundays. Peter saw the spark in her grow brighter each week, a stubborn flame refusing to be snuffed out, and she never forgot. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every random Tuesday, when Peter's truck would roll into town, there'd be a plate waiting for him, a scarf knitted by hand, a new thermos for his coffee. But what Mary was building wasn't just gratitude. She was rebuilding herself. 2 years later, Peter pulled his rig into Tulsa on a rainy afternoon, not much different than the night he first found her. Except this time, he wasn't alone in noticing something. The diner was decked out in twinkle lights. Balloons floated near the door, and there she stood, not in a muddy wedding dress, but in a crisp blue dress, her hair neatly braided down her back, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Peter climbed down from the cab, confused. Mary ran to him, and threw her arms around his middle, nearly knocking the wind out of him. "Peter!" She laughed and cried at the same time. "I did it!" He blinked, stunned. "What did you do, kiddo?" She pulled back, beaming. "I graduated college full scholarship social work degree. I'm going to help girls like me. Girls who think nobody will ever show up for them." Peter wiped his eyes roughly. "Kid, I'm so damn proud of you." And then before he could catch his breath, Mary reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crumpled envelope. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales.